everyone. My name is Mary Canty. I'm Assistant Director of Missoula Community Access Television. We're in the MCAT studios this morning to welcome filmmaker Julia Reichert to a documentary production workshop funded by the Montana Arts Council. And those of you who were lucky enough last night to join us at the Crystal Theater saw her new feature film, Emma and Elvis. And it was really a great evening. We had a wonderful time, and we were very glad to see you there, and it was a success for us, so we'd like to do this again in the future. Julia's best known so far for her documentary work, two films, Seeing Reds and Union Maids, both nominated for Academy Awards. She's also a documentary production teacher with Wayne State University in Ohio.
Wright State.
Wright State. So sorry.
Wayne State's in Detroit.
Okay.
These things matter.
Haven't been out that way for a while. So we're going to have a morning session, take a break, and then have another afternoon session, and we'll go ahead and get started. Let's welcome Julia.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, back to work. We're going to start even though everyone's not back, but that's their problem. Okay, so here we are. You know, we talked about, oh, by the way, I wrote 3:30 on here because we are going to go after 3:30. I know this was supposed to end at 3:30, and I should have told you from the beginning of the day because I knew we were going to go past 3:30, and I forgot. I don't know exactly how long past, not hopefully hugely long. But anyway, that's why 3:30. Okay. Just telling people we're going past 3:30. So we've been talking about deciding on your idea, refining your idea, challenging your idea, starting to gather, doing your research, your interviews. We talked a lot about interviews. We're going to talk a minute more about interviews before we plunge on to talking about actualities. Two final things I want to say about interviewing. There's, obviously, I talk for hours about interviewing with my students, but kind of boil it down here. You're looking for engaged material, right? You're looking for stuff where the people on the screen are clearly care about what they're saying, are being articulate, are being passionate as much as possible, are connected. You know the difference between a good, when you watch an interview that's good and one that isn't. When the person is actually connecting with what they're saying, right? That's what you're looking for. And all the things I said before, just keep those in mind as you go out there. I didn't say too much about. Someone asked, what do you do if you've already sort of talked a lot to the person, you already really know them, and how do you make it fresh? How do you go back to where your audience is, which is they don't know this person at all. They don't know step one about what they have to say, right? How do you go all that way back? Simple suggestion I have for you is take somebody in who they've never met to sit with you and to maybe even ask a few of the questions, because then they'll tend to talk to them as a first-timer again. I've used that method effectively often. I ask my production assistant to sit with me while we're doing the interview, or I introduce them and I make sure the person is the subject is relating to them too. That can work wonders. Okay, follow-up questions. I didn't talk too much about that. I think that's very much a key to a good interview. I remember I said don't just sit there and go down your list of questions, right, no matter what they've said. You want to be flexible. If they bring up something that really sort of intrigues you that you were not expecting, remember this journey will take many turns, take a fast note. If you're not quick on your feet enough to go right back to them on that, you're not quite sure what you want to ask them, but it's really stuck out. Take a real fast write down a little fast word about it and be thinking about how to bring that up later, right, in a follow-up question, something that intrigues you. Usually, your list of questions is not really adequate, right? You need to probe deeper. You'll be ready for any surprises that come up, and you'll formulate those into follow-up questions. Sometimes the interview will come out all in a different order than you expect. You think you're going to do the person's life chronologically, or you're going to present the information chronologically or in some logical way, and they'll just start right in talking about point 4. Well, you don't say, no, I don't want to hear that yet. You go with it, right? You go with it, and then you have to be a little quick on your feet. This is something you get from experience. Sometimes the most useful questions are, oh, really? Tell me more. Is that true? Uh-huh. Or just nodding. Looking at them attentively and nodding. Very often when people say something sort of provocative, and they won't say any more, you can just kind of look at them. And then they'll, surprisingly often with that silence, they'll keep talking. Sometimes people make the mistake of doing all the work for the interviewee, right? Of phrasing questions in a way that all they have to say is yes or no. Giving them 3 or 4 choices. Well, do you do this for this reason or this reason or this reason? What is it? And they'll, instead of saying for themselves what the reason is, they'll pick one of your reasons and talk about it. Don't do all the work for the interviewee. If there's a silence, don't feel like you have to jump in and ask the next question or reassure them by taking over again. You know, just hang back and wait. Sometimes that's really the best strategy. And sometimes, again, just those little words. Aha. Why? Why do you say that? I'm surprised to hear that. Just little reactions like that are extremely valuable to keep the interview going. Of course, there are times you have to control the interview. You have somebody who goes on at the mouth, right? Particularly, you have a lot of experts. You know, judges, professors, scientists, and so forth. Who just talk on and on and on. You have to control the interview, especially if they're talking in a way that is too technical for your audience. You have to say, wait a minute. Could you say what you mean by that? Could you give me an example, a specific example of what you mean? Could you make it more real? You know, my audience really isn't very technically oriented. You have to explain that for me. You have to jump in. Sometimes you have to just plain old interrupt them if they are just these intense talkers. You have to just sit right up in your chair and cut them off. You know, don't be afraid to do that if the situation calls for it. Okay. Plenty on interviewing. Let's talk a little bit more about getting actualities. Under the gathering mode here. I have a few things I'd like to say to you about that. Whoops. Oh dear. I want to lose my notes. By actualities, I mean you know, things like demonstrations, somebody doing something, somebody getting up in the morning cooking breakfast, a potter making a pot, an artist doing their work of one kind, somebody cutting hair, a kid playing. Actualities, right? Not interview, not something you've set up, watching somebody do something. Coming out of the tradition of cinema verite or direct cinema. Video is a great medium for this, by the way, because you can just run and wait for the significant moments. With film, of course, it's so expensive, you have to stop and start the camera all the time and be constantly evaluating, is this worth it? With video, you don't have to do that so much. So you want, out of actualities, you want a real feeling and look of reality, with as little intervention from you, the director, the producer, the camera crew, whatever is possible. You try not to say, could you move over a little bit while you're doing that, you know, if you can help it. Because then the person begins to perform for the camera. What you don't really want generally is somebody performing for the camera. So things like asking them to move over or wait a minute or whatever. If you have to do it, you do it, but you try not to. You just, okay. So you want that kind of material. You want to look for the significant moments, right, which are often not the ones that you expect. Sometimes it's very interesting, let's say, to watch like a politician, and you're doing an interview, and they're doing their thing, and then their assistant walks in, and the politician barks at him, or treats him in a really insulting manner or whatever. They get a phone call, whatever, and that's actually a very significant moment. That's when you really find out about the character of that person. Right? Sometimes a significant moment is not what you're expecting. I could give you so many examples of me blowing the most important moment, but I won't trouble you with that. You also want to look for eloquent images when you're shooting actualities. Eloquent, sometimes very specific images. Sometimes you're watching, let's say it's kids playing or someone, an artist doing some work, whatever. Sometimes it's nice to stay on a nice wide shot. You can see a lot with that. You can move around pretty well with a nice wide shot. You can get in close. But sometimes you want to really go in for a detail. You want to wait a moment, go in on telephoto, and watch their hands at work. Or watch, they have a beautiful fish tank with some interesting fish. They have an herb garden. They have an interesting plaque on the wall. I mean, interesting, significant details. Sometimes they're called cutaways, and I think just like talking about talking heads, that's a way of demeaning what those are. Just saying, oh, we need a few cutaways just for editing. No, you don't just need them for editing. You need them to explore that person's character and personality and environment, right? Or to explore that situation. Maybe you're shooting a demonstration. Maybe there's an interesting shot in just, the stack of placards sitting on the sidewalk. Maybe there's an interesting shot in the way, a mother with a banner is dealing with her 2-year-old who's crying. Maybe there's a little confrontation going on between a policeman or a policewoman and one of the organizers. It's not the big action, but it's an interesting side action. You always have to keep your as you're doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, keeping your eyes and ears open for what else is going on, and what little details there are that will help you really tell the story of that situation. It's one reason I think it's great to have a second person on your crew, too, is that they can be looking around and helping you out. And obviously you want decent sound and decent visuals. You want to, I always think, have a separate mic. I want to say a little bit about getting decent visuals. Do you know about, the wedge? Have you heard this concept, using the wedge? No, maybe you think of it differently. Very often when people are going to shoot something, like I'm going to shoot you guys, or you're going to shoot 2 or 3 people talking or whatever, people tend to line people up, 1, 2, 3 in a straight line, and shoot them flat. We tend to think as if the world is like a stage. There's a proscenium. We are standing back here observing it, and it's out there somewhere. Well, in film, with film and video, really what you have is not just this little square out here that you're shooting, right? It's a wedge. Forget about this guy. And you have all this space in here, from the point of view of the camera to whatever is the background. You have all this space. Things that are happening right up close to the camera and things that are happening way in the background are often very interesting juxtaposed with one another. Right? You want to look to see how, if you can get in a position like, I could shoot you guys like this, right? You're all stacked up. Or I could come in here, and I could look at you right close up, and you here, and you in the background, and you over here, and I've got a much more dynamic shot, and I even see the camera over there. I have a much more dynamic shot by using the wedge, using the full capability. Yeah.
I'm wondering, do you have preferences as far as wide angle or narrow angle? Or?
I think that's a creative choice that you have, depending on the situation. I like a lot in shooting actualities to use like a nice wide angle, and to move in close if you need to. And you guys use small format video, so it shouldn't be an issue for you. I mean, we have a big old 16mm camera, it can be kind of a cruise if it can get in the middle of people. Well, with these little video cameras, it's great. Move right in on people. Sometimes in shooting details, I like to go for a little more telephoto. Because what you're saying is, here, audience, you're communicating something to your audience, right? This is a little detail I want you to look at. This is another little detail I want you to look at. Now, here we are back to the main action in a wide shot. But that's just me. You'll all develop your own interesting styles of camera. Kurosawa, who's a great film director, Kurosawa's wife, I should say, always says she can tell when he's about to be shooting a film because he sits at the breakfast table with salt and pepper shakers. I don't know if you can really tell this. And he moves them around, and he goes like this. He moves them around, he goes like this. He's figuring what's in the wedge. And he's known as being a great visual stylist, right? Great sweeping imagery. And he is very conscious of using that entire space. The close, the medium, and the far away, right? And the interactions between those. And if you don't see it there, move around so that you can get it. It makes for much more eloquent stuff, right? I mean, it's much more interesting to look at you guys like this, I can tell you, than it is like this. And this is just a simple example. So always, think about the wedge as you're shooting. Okay. I think something that I see a lot in access work, in all kinds of work, really, photography or whatever, is people don't get close enough. People really hang back and they use these big old loose medium shots, which are okay for establishing stuff, but you know who Robert Capa is, photographer?
War Images.
War Images, yeah. He took some of the very wonderful shots of the Spanish Civil War and World War II, early Vietnam. He was actually killed during the early days of the Vietnam War. He said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you aren't close enough. I always pass that little thought on to my students, because I think it's quite true. Whether you're taking the shot of the family at the beach, or you're shooting an interview or you're shooting an actuality or somebody doing something, don't be afraid to get in close, right? Okay. Now, there are limits to that. We talked about the extreme close-up, which can tend to exaggerate people. Particularly, I think the extreme wide-angle close-up, anyone looks like an idiot in an extreme wide-angle close-up, pretty much. That's my feeling, okay? My partner, who's a video maker, completely disagrees with me on this, but that's how I feel. While you're shooting, keep shooting. Keep thinking all the time, evaluating what am I getting, what's good, what else is going on. If you get a good shot, this is the editor in you that should be talking. Let's say you get a nice close-up, an eloquent close-up, or you're shooting a scene where people are interacting in an interesting way. Hold it. Don't get it. And okay, I got it. No, I'm over here. For editing purposes, I would say hold it for anywhere between the count. I always count 1,001, 1,002, 1,000. So I know that I'm really doing it, because in the heat of the moment, you can think you've got 7 or 8 seconds, and you've really got 3 seconds later on, and you can't even use the shot because it's too short. So train yourself when you're shooting to count 1,001, 1,002, 1,003. I always try to count, if something good, up to at least 7 before I will go for something else, to have a usable shot for editing. Okay? Sometimes even further. Look for not just close-ups of objects, details of what people do, the way they look, the way they touch each other. Use dynamic angles, deep background. I talked about having your interview subjects up close and having lots of space in the background. Get people away from the walls. We talked about all that. Okay, that's just a few words on shooting actualities. Now, oops. This is really sort of speeding through all this stuff. Okay. Where does this next one come in? Oh, I think this next one's going to come right now. We're just talking about the look of stuff now. Now, I've picked this piece because this is an excerpt from a 30-minute documentary called Cowgirls. Some people might have seen this. It was made by Nancy Kelly and Kenji Yamamoto, who also made 1,000 Pieces of Gold many years later, which I think many of you have probably seen, a feature film that was actually set here in Montana. Asian American woman's story, historical film. This is an earlier film they made. It's about it's three little portraits. It's a very, very nice piece. I think we're going to leave a copy of it here. It's a very, very nice piece. If you're interested in doing portraiture, right? You know, looking for interesting people's lives and telling about their lives. This is a great film to see. I'm only going to show you the last of the 3. There's an older woman who owns a big ranch. There's a younger, really incredibly, both gorgeous and really strong woman.
That's the one,
Who manages.
This woman is the most incredible woman in the world.
Well, you'll see her. Okay, I'll back up a little bit. She's amazing. I was going to show the third one. I was going to show the third one, which is about the two little girls.
She's like bad.
She's bad, right? She's bad. Anyways, I was going to show you. I'll back up and show you a little bit of this amazing woman, and then show you these 2 little girls. Maybe we'll even have to sort of talk a little bit through it. It's very nice for portraiture. It's very nice for looking for eloquent images. It's very nice for following action, using dynamic angles. The whole notion that sometimes you have to hang back and not intervene. There's a moment here where you're just sort of dying for the filmmaker to help the subject, you know, but they don't, and they get a great scene out of it as a result. So, is there any way just to have a little light in here, or is it sort of all or nothing?
You need a flashlight?
Well, that would help. I was thinking I might do a tiny bit of stopping and starting.
Do you have a flashlight on?
So dark.
Turn that light on.
That might help. Let's try that. Is this on?
Yeah, it's on, but not playing.
It's not yet. I'm gonna rewind some.
I know it too, and I know
Robert
it.
Kappa.
Robert.
Kappa. I think, by the way, any of you who are into camera work, look at still photographs.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you that enough. Look at Henry Cartier-Bresson. Look at Robert Kappa. Look at Bruce Davidson. Look at, I mean, as I could give you, in fact, I think I have a list here. Go to the library. I'm sure those books are there, and just spend some real time looking at what the images that they get.
Ansel Adams.
I don't tend to recommend Ansel Adams. His work is beautiful. His work is so much, I love it too, as art photography, but I'm thinking more of documentary photography for people who are into getting into the action. The way Cartier-Bresson, you know, uses the incredible use of triangles that he has in deep space. Anyway, Ansel Adams' work is great. But I would look at documentary photographers' work, just for eye training. Okay, so we're going to try this light thing, right? I'm so bad at this kind of stuff. Yeah, I'm ready. I can handle film, but video baffles me sometimes. Okay. There. Yeah, let me just go back.
Yeah, the haystack shot.
Oh, I know. That's at the very beginning. That's like 20 minutes back.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I can't.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to be a good boy. I'm gonna get a little. Cowgirls. This is taking place Montana, Wyoming. I wanted to bring it partly because we're out here. This is just a little lyrical sequence that obviously the makers sort of decided they would like, and they went out and shot it. Okay, let's go from here. It's an actuality, obviously, of her. It's too loud, yeah. Baffled by this. There she is. This is obviously set up. Nice music, little lyrical ending moment. She's riding solo, which is part of her life.
This way of life is very important to me. I've gotten up in the morning and felt really down and thought, what in the hell am I doing here? You know, what is the future? And I've gone out, you know, sort of dragging, got the cows in to milk. But by the time I was through with chores, I thought, all right, you know, this is why I'm doing this.
Beautiful
like
close up.
this.
Right at the moment she says, I like this.
Hopefully that won't change for me.
And you're looking into her character here. Okay, and that's the end. Setting the scene.
I love all the roar and the rattle, the roar and the billow of cattle, and I love to see the cowboy at the rodeo.
See a little detail. This is what I'm talking about. It's very nice, right?
And I can see Larry swinging.
And this is an actuality we're watching now. Getting ready in the morning. Our subjects, it's not mom, it's the kids. Notice how they really follow the action here in a very nice way, unobtrusive way. It's on a tripod, I think in this case. Maybe not.
Different daughters.
No, it's not. Sorry.
We've got an older daughter in cricket that's very compassionate, very caring kind of an individual. She has ambitions of being a nurse or a veterinarian. And we've got another daughter in Nandi that's much younger and definitely a free spirit. Right now she's betwixt and between being a rodeo clown, a bullfighter, or a buckaroo somewhere out in the Nevada desert.
So nice and silhouette, kind of almost silhouette.
I want the girls to enjoy the full gamut the ranch has to offer. I make it more of a game at this stage. I think they've got plenty of time, the rest of their adult life, to work at it. But I don't want them crawling under a pickup and trying to repair something mechanical. If they want to do that later, great, let them do it. But now it's working with the animals, feeding their calves, feeding their colts, and just general light ranch chores. I want them to experience the whole gamut of it. Okay, you put it in there.
See a nice dynamic angle there.
Then release it, and then pull it out. Give it about a second, release it, and pull it out.
The wedge.
Okay?
A lot of times I think I ask them to be maybe too grown up and not let them be little girls and squeal and giggle and things like that. And I'm sure that that's a fault of mine maybe, because you only have so much time to be a little girl and you have all your life to be grown up and responsible.
Walk right up here and fold it right in. Right straight in. Yeah, fold it straight in. Work. Get her. Yeah.
I like cutting cows and starting them. Mm-hmm.
You like to ride all day?
Sort of.
What about this job?
It's kind of good, kind of not. You get cow manure on your face, but Not very good. But when you don't, it's good.
Pretty simple?
Go down there.
We should all apply for that sometime.
Okay. Okay, girls, push her up a little bit. Take 'em. Move 'em right up.
This sound is obviously from some other situation, right? It's added on here appropriately.
Be real quiet till they line out and know which way they're going to go. Girls, spread out there. Those cows don't need that one hole plugged. You can do both holes. Go ahead, Cricket, and take them on up there. Just lead them right up there, Cricket, toward the gate. Just.
I hate getting yelled at from us. You're never in the right spot. You're always someplace wrong, and it ends up being a longer day than if you did. That's when most of the family gets yelled at.
Mom, will you help me up? Go ahead. See what you can do. If you can't, I'll help you.
That's great.
They yell at me a lot because I do things wrong because I'm not doing cricket. I want it. You look.
I just wanted to point out to you, I don't know if you're sort of noticing how the voiceover is kind of coming in and out. This makes fairly heavy use of voiceover. In fact, some of us, I might say it's a little too much voiceover. I'd rather watch more of it. But you notice how they're very careful in key moments that are really wonderful moments, like the mom, you know. They pull back the voiceover, and look, when the girl is shooting the injection into the cow, they pull back the voiceover and let the natural sound come up. Because those are really just very eloquent moments, and you don't want to throw voiceover or music or anything over that. And as you get better at editing, you'll be able to see in your footage what are really just the gem moments. And you don't want to screw them up. You want to let them play, right? That's partly why this is so great. If it was just straight voiceover over everything, talk, it would really bother us, right? Okay. This is the moment when, of course, I said you want maybe the filmmaker should have helped her up, but no.
And when I missed a scored, but I used to be a 6 and now I'm 7. I can do a lot of things now.
Okay, come on, Ed.
There's also a really nice little connection there between, she just finished a nice little piece saying, I was 6 and now I'm 7. I can do a lot of things now. She gets on the horse, and then we see her doing this. Very nicely edited. Again, it doesn't trumpet itself. It's just very, very concise sort of editing.
Little girl underneath this big.
Yeah, well, that's impressive in and of itself, right? We're talking about the structuring of this, though.
And I didn't feel that there was a lot of danger. You know, they just don't react the same as if they're relaxed and confident about what they're doing.
You still feeling toe? Did you get your big toe or your little toe? No. Okay. Your big toe or your little toe?
Just a beautiful shot.
How's your toe, Nandi?
Fine.
Doesn't hurt anymore, huh?
No.
I'm sure if he thought he was stepping on his little buddy, he wouldn't have done it so hard.
Yeah, but he doesn't have to stop on it hard. That kind of hurts.
You think it's going to turn blue and purple and black and fall off?
We have radio mics on them, actually.
Do you know what kind of birds those are? Nope. Chickadees. Chickadees. Can you say chickadees?
We're supposed to do it first, the homework first, and then we can do our other jobs. Like Mom says, do your homework first, and then you can do a lot of other fun things. You can.
Did you get all your homework done?
No.
There's a real intimacy to this scene, partly because it is shot pretty close up.
What's Mrs. Jordan going to say?
I don't want to know. We can put this old cowboy hat on the snowman too, said Jack. stronger than any of the boys.
I think the boys. They like more of the town girls more than they do us.
I think the town girls, I think they're a little bit prettier. I don't know why, but they have a little bit fancier things and more things.
It's a great subject.
Actually, all my kids and the boys think girls can't work on ranches. I think that I can do better than boys on a ranch. But I want to know, if you know, tell me, why we wear pants and dresses, but boys can't wear dresses? We wear both, and they don't. You know? Wonder why God didn't make both of us the same.
That's the first one. Yeah. That's the second one. There's tobacco too. Okay, can we get the light on? It's a really lovely piece. I sort of hate to tell you. Yeah. I know some of these people actually.
The shot on the top of the haystack, I thought that was a man. We didn't see this time. The first time I saw it, I thought it was a professional fighter up there.
Yeah, with the muscle pieces, the arms, yeah.
Yeah.
Get your pens out. Cool. Okay. I gave this to my daughter for her 10th birthday. I bought her a copy of it from Nancy. $25 was a great birthday present. This is not a piece this is a different, it's not an issue piece really. It's not an experimental piece, it's a portrait. I think there's a real strong feminist side to it, a real strong kind of role modeling side, which I find, this is a wonderful piece to show to teenage girls. It totally or boys, I suppose, too. Totally amazes them. And it never quite trumpets, well, here we are, the film about cowgirls. It just sort of tells these people's stories and lets you into their lives. And it's just a lovely little sort of lyrical piece. So I wanted you to see that. And I wanted you to look at the use of the camera, particularly here, in following the action and following actualities and getting in the right place and finding the eloquent moments. You saw a little bit of the kind of use of details. There's that throughout. I hope you get to see this piece. We're leaving a copy of it here, right? Which would be for just you to look at, not to dub and so forth. I'm sure Nancy wouldn't mind. Okay. So here we are. We've gathered everything, and of course, here at this point, you can also think about what music you don't make final decisions at all at this point. But you start thinking about: do you need headlines? Do you need photographs? Is there music that might really help tell the story? Like these cowpoke songs, cowgirl songs, are really help tell the story at various points. They use sort of throughout. That can be part of your research. They use some archival material at the beginning. Think about that whole palette, and as part of your gathering. Okay, now let's move on to. We'll go much quicker from here on, I think. Let's hope. The beginning of that analytical phase, right? Logging. Now by that I mean not logging trees, but logging this vast amount of material that you have. I hear some producers who have been through this. Oh no, not logging again. But yes, this is extremely important. Now I suggest, usually doing a documentary, you might have several different interviews, several different actuality pieces. I would suggest that you don't wait till you're all done with everything to start your logging. The reason is, not that you end up with so much to do, not at all, because remember, this is not just rote logging just to do it. This is your beginning to apply your powers of analysis, of selection, right? And as you begin to analyze your material, new questions will arise. It will begin to guide your research more, right? So log them right away, right? As you're listening, you'll think, oh, you know, I didn't follow up on that. I should have. Or, oh, they said this, you know. And then half an hour later, they said that. Gee, there's a connection there, you know. Or maybe you will remember that you interviewed somebody 2 weeks before, and you thought they said something similar, but you don't have it logged yet, so you can't really find out, you know, without going back and playing the whole thing. So log right away. Now, here's what I mean by logging. Log your tapes. What I suggest people do, and I'm really a fanatic on logging, is first of all, you watch or listen to the whole tape again, and just watch it, and maybe jot down what really stands out to you, you know, and what seemed to be just gem kind of stuff. By that I mean strong stuff. It can be either right on the point of your subject, your idea. It can be something funny that maybe isn't on the point. It can be something that's passionately said that is or is not on the subject. It can fit into your idea or not. Think about that. Then, second time through, get out a notebook with a clean sheet of paper, right? I would keep as a logging notebook, probably. Clean sheet of paper, several sheets of paper. Right on the top, you know, the name, however you want to do it, the name of the interviewee, the date you interviewed them. That's actually rather significant that you write that down. And probably your cassette number or something that will make sure you know this cassette goes with this log. You may interview that person 2 or 3 more times. You don't want to have any confusion as to which time this is, right? You don't want to just put the subject, you want to put the person's name. Anyway, all these details. This is going to be your log. But you're going to listen to this piece again, only this time much more slowly, much more carefully. And I guess with video, what you do is you write. There's a count with the counter. You can get real time numbers. Randy tells me, and so I would say that's probably your best way of keeping track of where various statements are, is with the real time numbers, not the counter, because counters will be different. You put it in a different machine, and the numbering system will be totally different. So if you can get it real time, that's good. If you're at home, you can use a stopwatch, I guess. I don't know exactly how you do it in video. Is that about correct? Yeah. Okay. So you start listening. You figure out, okay, what's the first usable byte? What's the first usable bit of sound? It may be a while before there's something really good. When you get to that first usable byte or bit, stop and write down verbatim the beginning of the statement. Verbatim, word for word. You can even write the whole first sentence if it's not too long. Word for word. Okay? And then keep listening. Well, they're still on the point. Yeah, it's still pretty good. Well, they kind of digress there, but still on the point. They come back. Then they stop. And then you either raise another question or the interview goes a different direction. Okay, that statement is now over. It could be one sentence or it could be a paragraph. It could be whatever, but that statement is now over. Okay, then go back and note what you think of at this point is the end. Write down word for word. Again, the end of your statement. Word for word. In the middle, what you can do is just sort of, what I do is summarize. If there's something that is so well put that you know you're going to use it at some kind of cutting point later, you think you will, write that down verbatim also. But you can sort of summarize what's said in between. This is how I do it anyway. I have friends who do everything absolutely verbatim. This would drive me truly crazy. But, okay. Now, do you know why I'm really suggesting that you write it down, the beginning and end at least, down verbatim? Do you know why? Or you fledgling editors?
You can find it.
Well, not just so you can find it. You can find it with the counter numbers. But that's not why.
It's heredity.
What do you mean for
Gives you a
editing?
reference of what it is.
You know
get
what you
into,
got
so you can
there, and
sequence things.
Plus
You
you can
can
match
put it together.
You can't match them.
To something else.
Yeah, some of you are basically saying it. Very often you make cuts based on words. Think of seeing red. Or you write narrations that will lead into actualities. I think at the end of my narration, I say blah, 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 people who made that decision. That's my narration. The first word the woman says is, it was a decision I had to make. Well, that didn't just happen that way. I knew that was the first piece. I knew my narration, when I got down to writing final narration, was going to lead right into that statement. I knew exactly what the statement was because I'd written it down word for word. So I knew I decided to make a word cut, a word association. I used the word decide. She used the word decide in the same context. I think I even say it was difficult for some people to decide to be in the film or something like that. And she said it was a decision I had to make. So if you don't know, if all you know is, well, there was a good statement on, you know, the effects of some kind of air pollution on emphysema, well, there was a good statement about that, but you don't really know what it was at the beginning or the end. You won't be able to structure your piece on paper. You won't really know what you have to cut with. You'll be left having to go back to it and listen to it again, which is a drag, and that will really slow you down in editing. This logging is painstaking, but if you do it well, your editing goes like that. And I think it's better to spend your time in the logging, you know, just in the logging mode, than it is later trying to whip through all your tapes again and re-listen to stuff when you're sitting in an editing room where people want the time, right? Cheaper. If you're ever paying for it, it's much cheaper. So write it down verbatim, number the statement. This is statement 1, okay, on your notebook. Write it out. Okay, that's the end of that. Then I usually leave some space, or you can write it down so that you leave like an inch or two of space on the side, because very often you end up taking notes later, right? So you want to leave some space here and there. Or other times people do different colors, like the first time through they'll do black, and the next time through they'll do cutting on paper with red or something like that. Okay. Summarize the middle. You also should be thinking about what can go. I mean, sometimes people will be on a great statement and then they'll like digress, but then they'll hit their stride again. And at least in film, and I'm sure in video too, you can cut that out. You know, you don't have to worry about it. You can find a cutaway or a way to get around it, cut to somebody else, make a jump cut, whatever. So, now, I use the STAR method of figuring out a way to remind myself later, possibly even weeks later or months later, of what was really the best about this interview. Because you're going to end up with quite a few pages. If you do a half hour or 45-minute or an hour interview, you're going to end up with quite a few pages of material, right? And if you've numbered, let's say, 20 statements the person made that are good, and you haven't ever noted which were really good, you're going to probably have to go back and listen to it all over again. So what I do is, you know, if something is absolutely either right on the point or so concise or so terrific that I know I want to use it, or I'm very close to knowing I want to use it, I will give it 2 stars. If it's like really good and I probably want to use it, I use 1 star. And if it's just sort of good and would be useful, I give it no stars. And if I think it won't be useful at all, I don't bother to log it. Okay. I might just write a little note in between of what the subject, if they went off into something I don't think I'm going to use, I might write down just sort of what they talked about. Because you never know. You might need that stuff later. Okay, so you can use stars, you can use colors, whatever, but it's extremely useful again later in honing in on what's your best stuff. Because what's going to happen when you get into editing, you'll have, generally speaking, you'll have so much material that there's no way you're going to use all 20 statements that initially you thought were potentially going to be in your piece. You're going to use 4 of those statements or 5 of those statements, something like that. And this helps you zoom right in on them. Same with actuality stuff, by the way. You know, I'm sure when Nancy and Kenji came back from shooting at that ranch for probably several days, they looked at all their actuality stuff. And they, like, starred those little moments. You can imagine the one of the little girl getting up on the horse, that got 4 stars, right? And the girl, you know, shooting the injection, that got probably 2 stars or whatever. They went through and they looked at all that stuff and they started. And they figured out where that stuff begins and ends, too. So you do it with both. Okay. Good. Then you can begin to, you're still working on paper. I'm not doing anything in the editing room yet, other than just listening. You begin to group your statements. Group your good material, we'll say, because it might not be just statements. Group your material. Okay. This is where your real creativity starts coming in, right? You begin to look over your notes. You've got 3-4 interviews. You've got a bunch of actuality. You've got some ideas floating around about music and charts and maps that would be helpful. You maybe begin to think about narration that could weave this stuff together. You begin to see connections. It begins to sort of come together for you. So this is where you begin to sort of like make on a separate sheet, begin to group the statements and sort of hang together, you know. These 4 or 5 statements are all on land use. Boom, put them on a page on land use, along with maybe the actualities you have on this. These are all about, you know, the bad guys in the situation, whoever they are, put them on. Begin to group them so you see what you got, okay? This is where you go back. And go back to the idea again. Remember I said you're going to constantly be refining this. You go back to the statement that you wrote on your idea, and you really refine it. Now here's a point to really begin to fight vagueness. Fight bad spelling. Fight vagueness. At this point, you don't just want to think about, well, I have some good stuff on this. You really have to get real specific about what you have and in what order it's going to be. You begin to think about, where am I really going to begin this, probably? What's going to happen then? How am I going to end it? What really groups together? I always think in terms of both the logic of the piece and also the entertainment value of the piece. You can tell by, you saw a little bit of Seeing Red. It's giving you a lot of information, but it's also entertaining. So same with Cowgirls. There's enough in there we laugh, we enjoy certain things. Other things are a little more informational. There's like peaks and valleys in our interest. We begin to think in terms of the entertainment value as well as of the logic. Okay, now, this is where you do your first paper edit. And I, again, feel strongly that you don't start editing. You don't just get in the editing room and start throwing things together. You do a paper edit of the whole piece as best as you can at this point. You're going to start with, statement 1 from interview 3, and then you're going to go to statement 4 from interview 6, and then you're going to have a little musical bridge, and then you're going to have some stills, whatever it is. Put it all down on paper. Well, let's see. We'll start up here. I want to talk to you a little bit more now about a specific thing, which is blocks. I think sometimes for beginners especially, structural editing in documentary is really a mystery. In fiction you have a script. You follow the script, you tell the story, you shoot the scenes, you cut them together, and you cut them to the script. But with documentary, there is no script, really. You take all this stuff and you create the story. So this notion of sort of blocking can be very helpful. It helps you see what goes together, where you need transitions, where you need more information, how to make the whole thing work. Now what I want to do is go back. We're talking about blocking. Eject. Oh, what I want to do is let's see, beginning of If It Bleeds. Is that good? Oh, good.
You know what, though, I dubbed it, I don't know if we had time to rewind.
Oh, okay.
You might have to rewind.
You did. So we'll do that right now. I know what I can do in the meantime. We're just going to look at a little of it again, not the whole thing, because I want you, particularly those who have never done much documentary editing, to begin to think about what is a block. How to notice when a block begins and ends, and how to notice how blocks get joined, how transitions are made. It's a very, very important sort of creative element is how you make your transitions. Do you have a question? Nope. You were just about to say something. While we're rewinding.
Blocks usually up around 2 in the morning.
Yeah, creative blocks. That's a different kind of block. Right? Fatigue blocks. Let me just mention this to you. I don't know if some of you, I'll just make a little pitch for my film, which is playing in town right now. Last night was the benefit for MCAT, and I hope they earned some money. You did, good. It's no longer a benefit, but it would be great if you come see it. It's playing in the 7 o'clock show the whole week. I have more of these, and I passed some out last night to people who came last night, because it's a good film. You'd like it if you're interested in producing video. You'd find it fun. It's playing this week. If you work somewhere where 3 or 4 people might see it, if you stick it up on the fridge at work or on a bulletin board, or where you go to school, whatever, that kind of thing. If you have places like that, it would be a great help to us. We don't have the money to buy, TV ads and all that kind of stuff. But we do have people like you to help spread the word. So I would ask you when you leave, if you'd like to do that, just take a few of those with you. Is it back? It's done. Okay, let's start again. We should keep the lights up this time, I think.
Does it have color bars or anything?
It probably does. Why don't you put it on fast forward?
It bleeds.
Live News
That's okay.
Midday. Jill
Turn down the
Smith
sound.
with sports and the weather scene forecast.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Barbara Kerr.
Good afternoon and welcome to 22 Live News Midday for a Monday.
Hold it up higher.
Dayton police say charges will be filed in an accident this morning that left one woman hospitalized. Police say a man driving a pickup truck struck a Toyota headed east on 3
Tragic accident this afternoon
Okay.
took the life of a young
A
man.
man was shot to death today, and police are trying to find out who
Where
did
the mother
it.
had stopped, she had run over the girl. Both were taken to Good Samaritan.
Car lost control and slammed into an
The
apartment building.
79-year-old wife was found dead on the living room floor. The unofficial cause of death is strangulation.
Okay. What's the purpose of this beginning? Hook you, what else?
Tells you what the film's about.
Yeah. Tells you, who told you, and oh, local TV news, something to do with local TV news. You see that right away. Then you have this sort of collage of different stories, ending, I think, so cleverly on the cause of death was strangulation. I mean, the most, and it kind of fades out at that point. Nice little collage, kind of, it's not hard, those, between those little sound bites, which, by the way, you notice are played over black screen.
Right.
Perfectly okay. Nothing wrong with the black screen.
They use a lot.
Mhm.
Works real well.
Yeah. Those are, did you notice the transitions between those little sound bites they're mixed.
Faded.
Yeah. Or segued, you could say. They're not hard cut. I want you to begin to notice the difference between a hard cut and a segue, I guess I'll call it. What do you guys call it around here?
We just call it fades, you know, when you fade.
Fades. Well, there's dissolves too, though.
Yeah.
Blends. I call them
Blends. You call them blends. People have different words for them. They mean something different. We're going to talk more about that. But those are blended, let's say. Those are dissolved. Do you see why? Did you notice that? That they weren't hard cut. They could have been. That was a choice that the makers made. Why are they blended? I'd be curious to hear from somebody who's not a producer. I mean, not a heavy-duty producer like a few of you
They
are.
want you to get more of a feel of it than to hear the information that's being presented in the
Yeah, I think that's part. I mean, they could have presented the entire bite, but that would have been too long, and you don't really need that. But why, instead of just cutting them together, but cut one after the other? Maybe I should go back on this. Why?
makes it flow.
Does it make them all seem like they're the same, but
It
they're all
makes-
different?
That's how we hear it, and they all run together for us. They all
It's sort of
blend, all
saying
the
that, isn't it?
stories
Yeah.
blend together for us.
It can begin to. I want to just, so people may not be quite aware of what we're talking about here. Now listen for the way these are combined.
Pickup truck struck a Toyota headed east on 3
Tragic accident
They overlap,
this
right?
afternoon took the life of a young
A
man.
man was shot to death today, and
Overlaps.
police are trying to find out who
Where the
did
mother
it.
had stopped, she had
Overlaps.
run over the girl.
They're not
Both were
butt
taken to
cut.
Good Samaritan.
Car lost control and slammed into an
The
apartment building.
79-year-old wife was found dead on the living room floor. The unofficial cause of death is strangulation.
It's great. Dead on the living room floor. I mean, that's the best example of all
Unofficial
these.
cause of it.
Yeah, strangulation, right. I think they're trying to create a sense that this is all around us. It's sort of all, one blends into the other.
Ties it in.
It ties them in together. They all sort of blend together in our minds, as you said. If they had hard cut them, it's more jarring, actually. This is a little more, it's like a cocoon around us. It's sort of this hum around us. If it's butt cut, hard cut, it's more like we're in and out of it. And it creates a different feeling. And that's a choice. Every single cut you ever make, you have choices, whether you want it to fade out, fade up, butt cut, hard cut, whether you want that cut to be fast, I'm trying to think of what's an example of what we just saw. Oh, here's a nice little moment. You remember whether you want it to be fast or slow cut? Remember the moment in Cowgirls? We have some nice music going on, we hear some narration, it's early on in the little piece. And the music kind of ends, fades down, the narration ends, fades down, and we see the little girl's sounds of yelling as they jump off those abutments kind of comes up, right? It kind of pushes its way right in. It pushes us out of that mode of we're hearing narration and pushes us into that real scene. And it happens pretty quickly, right? It's almost like their sound pushes out the other sound. Well, that was a choice. I mean, they could have let you watch the scene for a while and then hear that nice little yell, right? It's a choice. Every single cut you make, you think about where you make it, okay? And how you make it. Okay, we're not talking blocks yet. We're not quite into blocks. This is like, to me, a kind of a tease and a kind of setting of the environment and honing you in on the subject matter without, again, announcing it in a narration. There is narration here, but the narration doesn't serve the purpose of telling us what the piece is about. This stuff does, which, of course, the filmmakers decided and gathered. Okay. And notice how she'll come right in the middle of the statement.
I really began thinking about it a couple years ago when Channel 7 here in town
We know what she's
had
talking about,
and
right?
aired
Pretty much.
videotape of a shooting at Dumfries Bar. A man had been in there wielding a gun. There was a police standoff, and the man was shot to death. It so happened that a Channel 7 photographer was on his way home, I believe, because it's right near the station, and was there with his camera and started rolling and had it all, including the moments the man died. Well, there was a lot of hoopla. They took a lot of phone calls. They took a lot of criticism. But it occurred to me at that time that maybe we're doing things backwards. I mean, we show all these shows on TV, Miami Vice, Blues, Bang Bang, Shoot 'em Up Violence, nobody thinks a word about it. But suddenly, show something real, people go, oh, you can't show that. I don't want to see
Too
that.
tight, in my opinion.
Maybe we're doing it backwards. Maybe we're not getting across
Yeah.
the point.
It's not fair to her,
Real
really.
life, real people get hurt. Real people bleed. Real people die.
She's making a good point.
Boom. Okay, so then we go to black screen after that. Notice this
Yes.
transition.
Real people die every day, and every day TV news is there. Out of all the events that occur in a day, why do personal tragedies qualify as news? Are we being informed, or is television just giving us a chance to gather at the scene of an accident and stare at the victim?
I'm going to go into the next piece, but then we'll go back. Okay. Just a little bit more. Okay. Pause here. So, I would say the last two pieces we just saw, I'll tell you, are to me a block. Okay. It's a very simple block. The piece the piece of interview. I really began to think about it one day. There was this example that happened at a bar. What's wrong with showing it? Real people do die. The world is not pretty, whatever she says. Okay. Strong statement. Following that, we have a very soft transition. You know, these kind of neutral city shots come up. The narrator is pretty laid back, pretty reasoned sounding. He's not appearing to be arguing with her, but in fact, he's responding to what she just said. And he's setting up. That's her declarative opening salvo, you could say, and then that's the filmmaker's opening salvo. That's a little block. We're now setting up the questions of the piece. Isn't this legitimate news? Is it legitimate news? Is it something we need to see? Okay, that's a little block. It's a simple little block. It sets up a conflict. Subtly, it sets up a conflict right away in our minds. I don't think we would stop and think about that, but it does. It sets up the two poles. Okay, now this, if you notice, do you think this is actuality or a setup? It's set up, yeah. We fooled you. I want to point this out because, you know, I pretty much remember that the filmmakers needed a way to sort of get you into the next scene, which was a wonderful scene, which was the actual news camera person gathering the story, right? And they decided they didn't just want to have him rushing down the street. They already had that. Remember, in a minute you're going to see him rushing down the street and there's the accident and so forth. They wanted a transition, but they didn't have one. So, when they were doing their second treatment, when they were going back to their idea and looking at their paper cut, they thought about, well, we got a problem here. You know, what are we going to do? We don't really have a transition. So, they came up with the idea. They said, well, what we're really about next time is we want to watch this guy on the street. Our first block is going to be about news gathering. Take us right into the scene. So they decided, let's go and shoot him starting up his day. And he said, okay. In fact, I think he even gave him some suggestions for the shots, as I recall.
Stare at the victim.
This kind of a shot here, by the way, is a dead giveaway. This is not an actuality shot. This is perfectly framed. You know, he opens the door right on cue. Camera's on a tripod. That's set up. This close-up, they don't accidentally get a shot like that. I mean, you don't just like happen to be shooting and get a shot like that. This too, it's kind of like a feature. This is like feature film thinking. These few shots. Now from here on in, they had this. They had him from the car on, but they didn't have the transition. So they thought, and it's perfectly okay, I believe, and I want to point this out to you, for you to construct something. For you to think, well, we need 3 or 4 shots to get us here. Or, you know, we really could use a shot of a book. Or, you know, somebody's yearbook, or somebody's, whatever, a calendar. You know, you can think about those things. Very often, after you get your first paper edit done, you'll have all kinds of holes, right? And your creative job is to figure out, well, problems, right? But you know how it is. When you have problems, that's when your creative juices really get flowing. And you do some of your neatest stuff. So that's what they did. It's okay to construct them.
In the world of
okay.
being a
Did they
television
focus
maker.
on the camera because that is
Sorry.
a tool of the controversial?
You mean later did they focus on the
When they
cameraman?
did the setup.
Why did they choose him as opposed to?
Why did they focus on the camera? I mean, is that because in their minds that is the tool of the...
You mean, why, in the later scene, do we see them shooting? Is that what you mean?
No, when
why
did they
is
set
it-
up?
You mean
The deck?
Yeah,
It's a
the
deck, it's not a camera, yeah.
Oh, the deck, yeah.
It's the deck. Why do they use, I think,
You've shown him set up.
it's showing him setting up. I mean,
Yeah.
he has to make, it's like a little technical, I mean, they wouldn't show the camera because he wouldn't go out with the camera. It'd be all in a case.
Yeah.
That's something he just threw in the back, it's a nice close-up. He checks it, whoop, he zips it up. It's just like he shows he's a professional, he operates crisply, he's on his job, he's working fast, you know.
Actually, he did the most important thing, he put tape in the recorder.
Yeah, I noticed people laughing with that, yeah, right, yeah.
Batteries.